Hello and welcome to Women in Retail Talks. I'm Christina Stidham, Digital Content Manager at the Women in Retail Leadership Circle, and today I'm joined by Michelle Cordero Grant, founder and CEO of Leisurée, the direct-to-consumer bra company that blends high style with everyday comfort. Today we're discussing why and how she started her own company, the marketing efforts fueling Lively's growth, how she manages being a mom with being a CEO, and more. So Michelle, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Great. So just to start off with my first question, I know that you once worked for Victoria's Secret, and perhaps that's what drew you to want to start your own bra company. Can you talk about your career background and what made you want to start Lively?
Sure. So I actually studied finance in my undergrad and thought I was going to work in banking on the intangible, but quickly realized that I needed something more tangible and substantial that I could see my efforts going towards, and found my way to the fashion industry. My first job was actually at Federated, creating private label brands for Macy's and Bloomingdale's. And my first assignment was actually in bras, in lingerie. And I quickly fell in love with the category, with the experience of concept to customer, and worked my way to Victoria's Secret. Honestly, because I was looking for something where that concept to customer could have less friction between those two words. And I found myself at one of the biggest brands in the world with significant market share and fundamentally a very strong business backbone, being Victoria's Secret.
Great. Yeah, you have a lot of awesome experience there. So can you share exactly what made you want to start the Lively brand coming out of that career history?
Sure. So, for me, the idea of brand is something that I've been really excited by, what brands can do and how they really impact human emotion and human psyche. So I would always think back to the 90s of Ralph Lauren, and everyone wanted to wear a Ralph Lauren polo or hat or anything that had that horse on it. And it wasn't about the IP of the polo and the PK cotton. It was how people felt when they had that logo on their chest, and what that stood for. And then, you take that a step further and you think about Victoria's Secret. And anytime someone sees that logo, people inherently hear angel fantasy and push up. And so for me, brands have always, right, had such immense impact on how humans think and carry themselves. But I didn't have a brand that really represented how I felt. And what that was, for decades, I was looking at brands where the marketing images were really inspiring us to be aspirational. That was the word that you constantly heard, right? Aspire to be. And so you're trying to be these marketing images. You're trying to be these different types of body shapes and heights and weights, et cetera. And frankly, it was exhausting because really none of the marketing images looked like me. And it was really tiring to put on outfits and products that were contouring and forcing my body in different shapes and sizes so that I hopefully looked 10% closer to what that image was. And so then I thought about the rise of social media and what was happening in the world, where there was more of a dialogue about human uniqueness and how important it was to be an individual. And this was back in 2011 and 2012. But there wasn't a brand that was talking about that. And so lingerie was, for me, one of the best categories to do that. I was working for a brand that had 30 to 40% market share, but we weren't talking about maternity. We weren't talking about different sizes or mindsets. And so I felt like there was the opportunity to create that brand. And that brand was not going to be created by a corporation or a company that spent millions of dollars on creating, what that name, that logo should be. That brand was actually going to be created by a community. So it was a very utopian and ignorant idea that I had. But that's kind of the general thesis for Lively, the brand that spoke to me.
Great. Can you share? You have all these great ideas, you have this goal in mind, and you really want to get started. Can you share how exactly you prepared yourself to launch your own company as a first-time entrepreneur, and tell us a little bit about that journey?
Sure. I never used the word entrepreneur before, I would say before 2015. I always knew I wanted to start my own company, I guess, in a sense that I wanted to run a company. It's funny, I saw one of my old bosses at Victoria's Secret, and she reminded me that in 2008, I actually wrote on my review, the annual review you do in corporate America, 5 years from now, where do you see yourself? And I was like, CEO of a company. So ignorant,
Oh my
but knew,
gosh.
yeah, so ignorant, right? But knew that I wanted to be a leader and wanted to bring people together and drive a really utopian culture. But the first thing that I did when I left Victoria's Secret was quickly had a self check and a sense of what I was capable of. And what I realized was I was an amazing specialist because I grew up in corporate America. So I was good at specializing in certain areas, which was merchandising, product development. I didn't know a lot about marketing. I didn't know anything about fulfillment. Or all of these other adjacent areas that you needed to run a business. And so the first thing that I did was I started meeting with startups and realized quickly that I needed to go work for a startup because I had no idea how to cross functionally bring all of these areas of a business together. And I also didn't understand how a company culturally would change through severe growth. So I found a role at Thrillist Media Group, which was a menswear company, very different from the world that I lived in thus far in my career, that bought a flash sale company in 2011. This was the height of flash, and learned how to take a company from single digit, seven figures to 20 million to 50 million to 60 million to 70 million in a matter of 2.5 years. So I like to say that I got my startup MBA. I don't have my MBA, but if I had one, it would be in entrepreneurship.
That's awesome. Yeah, that makes total sense. You didn't have that startup experience, so you went and joined a current startup so that you could gain that, being surrounded by other people. So
Right.
let's go back to Lively and talk about what exactly makes the Lively bras different from other bras that are on the market. So obviously there are a lot of issues with your standard department store bra that you find, like fit, color, limited sizing. It's never a seamless, fun experience when you go into a department store and just search around in that giant maze of bras. So can you tell us a little bit about how Lively does things differently?
Sure. Yeah. It was always fascinating to me that um, the word used in retail for our category is intimate apparel, which is a terrible term
Mm.
because it doesn't feel that luxurious or sexy.
No.
But it was always one of the most profitable areas of a retail organization. But it was always kind of overlooked and ignored and was kind of this dusty, dated category that was stuck on like the fifth or sixth floor in the back corner of the department store, right? And for me, what I realized is the category was never really celebrated. And because it wasn't celebrated, it wasn't getting the advancements and the logic of where society was going. So when I thought about where lingerie should be, it was what's happening in the world. This was the rise of athleisure, right? People were becoming more comfortable wearing comfortable things. And so ready to wear had been shifting towards athleisure fast and furiously. Footwear was shifting towards athleisure fast and furiously, but lingerie wasn't. And so what I realized was when I thought about what women wore on Saturday mornings, it was never their Monday through Friday, quote unquote, 9 to 5 bra. It was sports bras and swimwear. And when I would ask them why, it was underlying what they were saying is they wanted to wear products that conform to their body shape and their uniqueness versus them contouring their body into something that felt more like a contraption. And so as women, we all know the feeling of as soon as you walk in the door and put down your keys, you go to take your bra off. It's like you're taking your armor off for the day.
Yep.
But that should not be the case. And so what we decided was, well, let's embrace athleisure and swimwear and combine the aesthetic and the functional elements of what that category delivers with functionality of lingerie. And so if you look at our products, you see a lot of sporty, stretchy bands, cool mesh fabrics, cool handed fabrics instead of what is typically warm and kind of a little too cozy in lingerie. And then also things that are just logical, like front adjusters. If your bra strap is falling within a meeting and you're at work, who has the time to go to the bathroom and adjust the adjuster in the back? Nobody does. So they just keep pulling it up their shoulder all day long. But if the adjuster's in the front, you'll make the change. So it's really just thinking about the logical details of what women are asking for. Finally, the one statistic that stuck with me was 60% of the time women were wearing sports bras in 2016. They weren't working out. They were just wearing them because they were comfortable. And so we created, now what we have fun with is the word lingerie. Lingerie is the intersection of athleisure swimwear and the functionality of lingerie.
Yeah, I love that word. I saw that. I was looking at a couple different interviews that you had already done with other publications, and I noticed that word, and I'm like, that is exactly right. It's exactly what women want, just something comfortable, but they're not necessarily working out in their sports bra. That's perfect. So,
Yeah, it was funny too because it was also a business hack. When I was starting the company Lively, and I would say, "Yes, I'm starting this company called Lively," and they'd be like, people would say, "Great, what is Lively?" And as soon as I said the word lingerie, you would see their eyes shift, and what they saw
mm,
was corsets and lace and supermodels.
yep.
And so, from a business perspective, I actually just needed to create a word to have a new conversation.
Yeah, it makes total sense. So, I know that you had mentioned when we were talking about your entrepreneur journey that you didn't know, you were a specialist, you didn't know that much about marketing. What have you been doing to grow the brand as far as your marketing efforts, spreading that brand message, spreading that wording? And I know Lively's all over Instagram. I see your ads on my feed all the time, and they're super cute. I just want to know what are your marketing efforts that you're focused on.
Sure, yeah. So before launching Lively, we set a couple of guardrails and rules. One was we will always put our core values first and foremost, which is to stand behind the idea of what do people feel when they see the brand and the logo Lively. For us, that's passion, purpose, and confidence. And so the idea was let's create a brand where we have permission to sell bras today, but whatever we want tomorrow. And if you hold brand at the height of your priority list, that means that you have to compromise on having conversations in other areas like price, like you have to keep a very clear sense of what you want to communicate about product, etc. So our rules were brand is number one. While we have an amazing price, we will never message it at the top of the funnel because we're not looking to acquire customers for our price point. We'll never embark in sales or markdowns while we are developing the personality of what Lively is, because that will distract them from, again, brand. And we'll be very tight on distribution, even when those opportunities present themselves, until the brand identity is crystallized to the point that the world is telling us passion, purpose, and confidence. So by setting those guardrails, what we realized is our marketing strategy needs to be community. And in doing so, what we decided was let's build the community before we launch the brand so that the community creates the brand. And once that brand launched, the community shares and shouts the brand. And that for us has been the secret sauce and the magic of how Lively has grown so quickly. We created our community on Instagram at first, 100 women. And then we took to building an email campaign, which became 133,000 women. And we launched on April 1st with the ability to ship to every state in America within 45 days without any paid media. That showed that our strategy around putting brand first with the support of community works.
Yeah, that's great. And like I said, I do see you on Instagram and I noticed your community there that you have. So it makes total sense. And we're definitely seeing that community is so important to modern consumers that a lot of brands are starting to really be formulated around this strong sense of community. I think people love it because it makes you feel involved. It makes you feel like you're part of the brand story. So that's great. What are 3 goals that you want to achieve at Lively within the next year or so?
Wow, that's a great question. So I would say in the next year, one is to continue on the path of growth and brand awareness, but in new sectors. So, we just started really focusing on our retail footprint with brick and mortar. We went from no stores to 4 stores in a year. And so I would say retail is something that is a huge priority here at Lively, maintaining consistency and cohesiveness as we continue to open more stores in the next year is one big pillar for us. Number 2 is nurturing our ambassador community, which is now well over 100,000 women, but continuing to innovate on ways to constantly give back to them in the same type of support and appreciation that they've given to us. So what does that mean? That means constantly being a platform for them to share what they're passionate about, whether it's a new book that they've launched, a new art, or even a fundraiser around something that they could be passionate about. One example being mental health awareness. And then I would say number three is staying focused and disciplined, which sounds a little counterintuitive to a growth company. But it's really probably one of the biggest challenges that we have as a quote unquote startup is the power of saying no. There's so many amazing things that we could be doing, whether that's going international in the next year or increasing our distribution to even more channels in the next year. But staying true and focused and maybe taking off one or two things within the next 12 to 18 months versus 5 is a real testament to who we are culturally.
Great. Those are really solid goals. My next question is, do you have any tips for other female entrepreneurs who really want to launch their own brand, but they maybe don't feel confident that they know how to start a company?
Absolutely. So the first thing that I did when I quote unquote started Lively on in April of 2015, I came to an office with 4 blank walls and a notebook and said I was going to start Brand X today. And what I quickly realized is I knew a lot about a little, but I didn't know, like I said earlier in this interview, anything about fulfillment or customer service or digital marketing, et cetera. So what I did was I just built a list of what those areas of vulnerability were and started attacking my LinkedIn and network to saying, who is the smartest person in my atmosphere around fulfillment, around digital marketing, et cetera, and created a informal advisory board that I could call on when I was in a pinch in those areas. And trust me, I called on them a lot in the first 12 months. But it gave me the backbone and the mental, I would say, know how that I didn't need to know everything. I just needed to know the people that did. The second thing I would say is the best thing about entrepreneurship is your mental muscle. And in the beginning, your mental muscle is going to be, weak, and you have to embrace this idea of nurturing it. So just like you do in a physical atmosphere, whether you're learning how to train for a marathon or lift weights in a gym, it takes practice and it takes failure. And so in the beginning, your failures are going to feel monumental, but as you continue on the path, those failures, while they're more expensive, they feel less I would say, mentally taxing. You're just going to get up faster and faster and take on bigger and bigger if you just keep that type of mentality in place.
Those are excellent tips, especially I love the one about the advisory board, because building that community of, diverse but also like-minded professionals in your space that you can really call on is great advice. So for my last question, I want to hear your thoughts on work-life balance, which is this word that we all love throwing around, but maybe the lack thereof, the lack of work-life balance, rather. So I read an interview with you on Pop Sugar, where you had shared that you found out that you were pregnant with your second child only 2 months after founding Lively. How do you manage being a mom of 2 with being a CEO?
Yeah, it's definitely found out about my son Jack 2 months in. And I would say that one, it's made me way more efficient. So I actually view it as a pro for any women out there that don't have children yet. It's an amazing shift that you make in terms of efficiency with time. But the way that I do it is, one, I embrace the idea of empowering my team. You have to really invest in them because the organization has to thrive collectively as a group. There can't be I in team, right? Number 2 is I think about it as credits and debits. So the time that I spend at work and the time that I spend at home, if I overinvest in time at work, I give back to time at home. So for example, if I travel for a weekend and I miss time with my family, I'll give back time to my family by taking Monday off or taking a Wednesday off. But I don't adhere to the philosophy of corporate guidelines of Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. I credit and debit where I need to. The other thing that I do is I always give myself an hour in the morning, and sometimes it's 20 minutes to myself. before I see my children, before I come to the office and see my team, to just pause, reflect, give gratitude, and have clarity in terms of why I do what I do. And that way I go in that much more motivated and fired up to get it all done. And then lastly, I would say is I'm super grateful to have an amazing partner, my husband. So we, as a team, really, again, credit and debit one another to get it all happening.
I love that concept. Yeah, because it's really hard to balance the what you call the traditional, the 9 to 5, fitting all of that in, working weekends if you need to, and not being able to give back. So I love the credit debit system. That's a great idea. Well, that's all the questions that I have for you today, Michelle. So thank you so much for joining me on this episode of Women in Retail Talks. You're fantastic.
Amazing. I've had an amazing time chatting with you. Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening. For more information on this podcast, please check out our podcast channel page at womeninretail.com/podcast for show notes. Women in Retail Talks is available on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, and Spotify. Make sure to subscribe on our podcast channel page as well. If you've enjoyed this episode, please take a few moments to rate and review. Thanks, and until next time, this has been Women in Retail Talks.